Another way to get in is from a simple wrist tug when you're hand fighting. So doing this slow, I'm working on Colby's head, we're popping here, and if I can get to his wrist here, all I'm going to do is give it a quick pull down. And then what's important isn't so much that I'm really trying to squeeze his wrist. That's not what's important. I just want to make a circle with my hand that's smaller than his wrist. So when I hit his wrist, it's going to tug it forward, and he's going to tend to resist that. He's going to tend to respond to that. And I want to make that a fairly ballistic movement as opposed to just kind of a little tug here. I want to make a pretty rigorous movement there so that I'm going to get a response from him. And notice, as I pull back, if he's pulling his hand back, that gives me the opportunity to attack in. So I'm popping here, we're hand fighting, I give a tug here, and I come in. An alternative to just jerking the wrist is to transfer it to the opposite hand. So if I'm in this position here, remember before when I did the elbow jam, I was trying to get his elbow and arm out of the way so I can come around to the outside this time, and he can't defend quite as easily. This time what I'm going to do, instead of giving a tug here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the wrist, Colby's wrist, to my other hand. As I do that, I'm going to step to the side, and I want you to notice where my head is. Upper part of his lat kind of jammed up at the joint between his lat and lower part of the rear part of his deltoid here. So from here, I'm just going to transfer hands. So if you can see, the principle in terms of the basic attack after I've set up is pretty much the same as the elbow jam. Whether I came to here or transferred to here, I'm in basically the same type of position, just two different ways of getting there. So I have the wrist here. Instead of jerking, I transfer. You'll notice I step as I transfer. I'm not going to transfer, step. I want to cut the corner at the same time. You'll notice I have an angle here. Immediately I'm pushing into Colby to get his weight on his far leg. The other thing, when I'm doing this type of an attack, I really want to concentrate not so much on bringing the weight across. I want to concentrate more on bringing it down if I can. I would rather, and this kind of goes along with the principle I was talking about before, again, instead of making it neutral, tug the weight down. I've already got a little bit of weight now on this foot. Whereas if I just tug it laterally, you still will have more weight on this rear foot over here. So when I do this, again, I don't want to just have him drift out here. I'd rather keep the weight down, and that'll facilitate my attack. Again, notice, for example, you can set that up. You can set that setup up with a head pop setup. Again, chaining things together ultimately result in more success with your attacks by chaining setups together. I like the notion of getting the angle here because my opponent's starting to face away from me and I've got good position to attack in. Some people will, if they grab this wrist, may try to come around to this leg. I think that's a little bit more problematic because this hand is free to be able to defend. I'm not saying that you can't do that. If I was going to do that, I would want to have some kind of hand fighting on this side, head popping, to be able to distract him from likely being able to use this arm when I do attack that side. But my basic point here is that this is a more common kind of approach to a single. If I have inside control here, or I have the wrist here, one wrist, trying to attack the opposite leg. If I have his left wrist and I'm trying to attack his right leg, his right arm, if his right arm is free, that's a lower probability of an attack. Whereas if I transfer an attack to the outside, it reduces his ability to defend against me. So consider that type of notion as you practice with your various setups and single legs. The idea of being able to also have some attacks that kind of come around from the outside as opposed to from the inside. If your opponent gets wise to the fact that you're attacking a single leg, especially from this type of a position here, and he's making it difficult by pulling that back, you have a drag movement. We talked a little bit about that on the initial instructional on setups and such. And I'm not going to go over that now. There'll be another instructional that will go over those type of finishes and techniques from the drag that is in a little bit more detail. But be aware that when your opponent pulls back that single leg, that same side arm is typically vulnerable to a drag. So just kind of put that in the back of your head for now and remember that as a concept. So when you're thinking and practicing drags, remember if you've tried a single a couple of times and your opponent, if Colby knows I keep attacking that thing, I pop here and I'm trying to attack here and this comes back, the drag will be an effective movement. I wouldn't let somebody go on a drag. I'm just simply trying to show that notion of the movement of a drag. But be aware again, if your opponent's becoming wise and defending against that single by trying to pull that leg back, frequently they're vulnerable to a drag.